hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Grid. It's me, Pete Collins, and Brad, the Beard Moore. Look at that right there. How's it going, Brad?
It's good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We are here taking the helm away from Scott and RC, and we're just excited to be here, and it's a joyous time. It's good to see you.
You too.
Your beard is looking mighty svelte today.
Do you enjoy touching me?
I do.
Because it's just
You're
weird.
touchable.
Stop it.
Well, hey, we're here. We're going to be talking about, we thought we would do some of our own editing of some pictures and let you see kind of our walkthrough. It's kind of like a reverse blind critique in that it'll be eyes wide open critique. But before we even get started with that, let's start out with a winner.
Yes, winners are good.
Brad.
What?
We've got a contest over at the Kelby One blog, and this week it was about
baby pictures.
Baby pictures. And this week's winner is Robert Arbuthnot. I wanted to say Arbuthnot, but that's probably not right. Arbuthnot. Great picture there. It's just a wonderful interaction. This is the thing that I try to talk to people about photography, is that it's not just the technical, but it's the emotional, it's the story. And the thing about this is it's just got a wonderful depth going to it between the hand and the baby's looking off, but it's that hand gripping the big hand that really ties in the emotion and the relationship there, and it just takes it to that other step that goes beyond just a snapshot. There's just a really powerful story going on there, and it's just a great picture. So well done, Robert. Great job.
As Jay Maisel says, it's all about the gesture.
It's all about the gesture. Yeah. Yep. So
nice
great job, Robert. So we started talking about what we would do for a topic today, and we thought, so often you'll see the blind critiques where Scott and RC will try to kick through as many pictures as they can as possible. Mm-hmm. Well, we thought we'd take a little slower going and look at some of our own pictures and talk about how we would process them and talk about some thoughts we have when we do this. Now, granted, once again, all this stuff has some rules and stuff that you follow, but a lot of it is subjective. So I know there are going to be people yelling at the screen going, I would never do that way. How dare they do that or whatever. That's okay. That's what the comments are for and all that. But we're going to hopefully show you some stuff and give you some ideas to think about how to work your stuff. Yep. And I thought I would put the pressure on you first, Brad. Since I'm talking, I'm going to have you jump in and show us. And you're going to talk a little bit about there are two sides to editing. There's first the selection side and then the post-processing. And you've got to be aware that a lot of times you can get caught up if you say editing, especially when you're dealing with certain people. They're thinking the culling of the images, and then other people are thinking the processing of the images. So first thing we're going to do is let Brad talk a little bit about his editing or culling process. Yeah,
so I shot a concert last night and shot, let's see, a little over 1,200 pictures. You can see there at the bottom.
If they can see that, they've got amazing eyes.
Maybe they can. So what I always do is I just go through every picture full screen and just go through, and if something catches my eye, whether it's the color balance, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the gesture, whatever it is, there's something about the image that just kind of captures my eye, I'll tag it. So I'll go through and do a full round of tagging. And so after my first round, I had 77 pictures.
So here's you're just simply picking ones that have a chance.
Yeah. So I went through and I'm using Photo Mechanic here to do the tagging, and I'll hit the number 1. So that's my first round, and those are all the pink ones. And then I'll go through again to get it down, because I don't want to go through and edit 77 pictures. That's, for me, that's a lot. I know there's wedding photographers out there that do that every single shoot, and then some. But for me, I try to get mine down to maybe, depending on how well I shot or how interesting the show was, maybe 10 to 20, maybe 25 shots. So I had a few extras in here that I sent to friends that, that they were there and they had their pictures taken and stuff. So then, like you see here, there's some similar shots here.
Right.
So I don't want to have both of these shots. So it's very minor differences, but there was something about this one. I think it was with the hand.
There's a little more light, a little more detail.
That I just like the shot better. So that made the second round of cuts. And again, like that one, there's a big red thing right there. I had better shots of him. Still, I was shooting kind of from the same angle a lot, so I was kind of waiting on them to turn, because I was shooting from the stage. So basically, anything that's pink made the first cut, anything that's red made the second cut, anything that's orange made the third cut. So I'm going to get rid of all the pink ones. I wound up editing all of these because there's 24, and since I was kind of shooting for the band, I wanted to give them some extras. But then, like, these were kind of my favorites of the night. So once I got down to those, I take all these into Lightroom, and I go through and just edit all of them one by one. But I wanted to show just a few of the edits here. So I'm going to go here to the Develop module. So this is the finished image, but here's the beginning of it. So what I do is I kind of use Scott's rules of editing, and I just look at the picture and go, what do I want different about this? So first thing I do, and it's also kind of just the top of the sliders, is I'll mess with the white balance. So I'll move those sliders back and forth until I get kind of what I'm usually going for in concert pictures is a good balance of color. I like contrasting colors, things that kind of juxtapose with one another. So for this, like, that's all blue pretty much, so I wanted to warm it up some. Just the band here is Tycho, and they're basically just kind of an ambient music band, just kind of chill, I don't know, kind of downbeat, not like depressing or anything, but just kind of good background noise and just kind of concentration music. So the album cover, like, it's very warm and everything, so I kind of tended more toward warm tones and stuff. So then once I had the white balance in place, we'll go through and do the contrast to just add a little contrast, of course. I mess with the exposure, and for this, I love backlighting, so I like to kind of blow stuff out, but not so much that it loses all the color. But like in here, I don't mind losing the color here because it's kind of the point of origin, and then it gets a little darker as it goes out and the color comes back. So then I darkened it down, kind of like the silhouette there, then add some clarity, a little punchiness there, bring up the vibrancy a little bit, and then I was like, okay, that all looks good, but it still feels a little loose to me, so I cropped it, then I readjusted, and then add a vignette, and that's done. Actually, did I? Okay, yeah, so synchronized settings. What I did after the fact, I realized I was kind of going through and changing all of the camera calibrations, which is over here. Go down to the bottom, you can do camera calibration. I was changing them all to landscape because it gives a little more vibrancy, a little more contrast, so it just gives you a better starting point. So I did that after a little bit and just made all of them landscape. So there's that one.
Well, so, all right, go back to that one for a minute.
Okay.
Let me ask a couple questions that maybe some of the
absolutely
some of the viewers would. Okay, so what about things like what do you think about? I'm pointing at the screen like y'all can see.
Point, and I'll use the
yeah,
cursor.
Yeah. So what about a couple little spots over here? Do you like those, or do those bother you?
If I was doing a little more like hardcore, like if I know I was going to make a print of this or something, I might go in and kind of get rid of that. But because they're more or less in the same color range, that doesn't really bother me too much. But other pictures, like, was it this one?
Well, I was just trying to get some of your thought process and what you're trying to capture, and what, you know, that a lot of times that will lead your editing. You know, do you want to keep this as you said you were shooting these for the band,
right? So
are they kind of going to be, like we had the discussion before, more photojournalistic, or are they going to be?
I have no qualms. I don't know if it's any of these that I'm showing, but like, because I was shooting from the stage out to the crowd, you could see the exit signs at the back of the venue, and those went away during the edit for sure. And even I don't know, it just depends on what it is. If it's an exit sign, for sure, I'll get rid of it. Again, if it's photojournalistic, then I won't clone stuff out. But just for me, for my own taste, and for the band, like, they're not, you know, if there's something distracting in the image, they want it gone.
Right. So you're giving these to them to use however they want. So
they'll use, if they do use them, they'll probably just use them on social media or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tom asks, are you shooting in RAW?
Yes, absolutely shooting in RAW, because shooting in JPEG, you're not going to have near as much latitude when it comes to editing, especially in challenging lighting situations. Like, I didn't know going into this what the lighting was going to be like, and as you can see in a couple of these pictures, like, there was a lot of smoke in the venue, not like, you know, smoke, but like fog, just to add atmosphere and stuff. But that also makes it very low contrast for the images. So shooting RAW, that gives me extra, you know, like I said, latitude to to bring some contrast back and really adjust that. And if for some reason there weren't a lot of flashing lights in this set, but a lot of times if there's very fast lighting changes, then the camera is going to be not, depending on what camera you're using, it may or may not be reacting quickly enough, and your exposure may be way on, way off, whatever, and having that raw file lets you really be able to adjust the exposure a lot after the fact.
Cool.
Nobody ever talks about the color calibration feature in Lightroom, Sousby says. Well, I just did.
Well done. Done.
So, do you want me to keep going here? Or?
Yeah, why don't you do one more, and then we'll take a break.
All right, so this one, like I said, there's a lot of kind of fog and stuff in here. First thing I wanted to do was kind of crop in, so I'll just skip ahead to the final crop, which is just pretty minor there. Again, went to landscape, which in this case adds a little contrast, basically.
Hold on, let's go back. I'm a bug you on this one again. So how did you decide where the crop was going to be?
All right, so for me, that's a little loose. Well, that's where I ended up.
Define that. What do you mean by loose?
Okay, so whenever you're using, again, it depends on what camera you're using, but a lot of cameras, especially full frame cameras, the focus points don't go, like if this is the frame, the focus points don't go all the way out here. They're kind of like in here, like they're kind of in the middle. So for me, when I'm composing, I'll go to the furthest focus point that I can, but that leaves a lot of excess room, usually at the top, so there's a lot of extra headspace, so I'll bring that in after the fact.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what I did here.
So when you say loose, it means you've got extra room on the sides
and
that you don't necessarily want.
That's not always bad.
No.
Sometimes I will purposely kind of zoom out and shoot wider so that there is like a lot of negative space. I tend toward that a lot of the time, but when I want to shoot tight, then if I can only get so tight and focus, then there ends up being excess room around the edges. So, all right, so that's where, and it's also kind of the rule of thirds thing. That's as a guide, I sometimes follow it, sometimes I veer from it. Again, go back to the landscape there, and then from here I just start playing with the color temperature to see what it comes back with as I move the sliders around. So just minor edits there. Then go into the contrast. Adding contrast that also brings in some brightness. Then clarity, and then black clipping. So this is where I went into, like, you've got the sliders for, I'll just bring it up over here. You've got all the shadows or the sliders for highlight, shadows, whites, and blacks. So this is where I took the blacks all the way down. Not all the way, but like most of the way, because that also helps bring in some contrast when you do that. So did that. Oh crap, did I just lose? Oh, I'll go back and readjust that later. So then add some clarity. I actually took the vibrance down some just because it was very red. And then just went through all this with highlight, shadows, white point. Then I added the contrast back in because it lost some color when I did that. Brought it down darker some more, but it was a little too dark, so I brought it back up. Then highlights, light. Then I used the luminance noise reduction and added a little bit of vignette, and that was that. So then I'll go ahead and do one more here. So this is one of my favorite shots from the night. It's because I was on this back of the stage shooting out. I was waiting on them to kind of turn to the side so I could actually see their face instead of just the back of their head the whole time. So again, kind of the whole thing with all the extra headspace up here. I had to shoot a little loose. And then that, yeah, so then I crop in like that. And then here, it's a picture like this that can really benefit from the white balance. So just making that change there gives him a more normal skin tone. I like the blue background a lot. And then changing the tint brings, just makes minor adjustments. Contrast, clarity. For the highlights, I liked having a little bit of lightness over here so it's not just all one kind of shade of blue. And again, just kind of going through and making little changes here and there. Then the vibrance, I actually took the vibrance down. You see how red his skin is here? By taking the vibrance down just a little bit, it makes him not so red and makes it look a little more natural. And then just brighten it up, do a little vignette, and we're done. So that was that.
Well, and Dan Hall asked the question, do you keep all your images even after you've culled them?
I do. I know people that don't. For example, we did a seminar in Hartford this past week, and then I wound up staying and hanging out with my former employer, Joe McNally, and just talking with him, and he was talking about how he whenever he has downtime, he'll go through old shoots on hard drives that, he's had for 5 years or so, and if he knows that the clients aren't coming back and asking for a wider take than what he's already given them. They've already used the images. They're kind of done. And if he doesn't really have any use for them, he'll go through and delete them. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I don't know if I'm
the hoarder in me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm like a photo hoarder or what. But I have a problem.
Well, but I also have this theory, and I was talking to somebody one day, especially when I was shooting stuff for high school sports and stuff like that. And even you shoot a lot of bands. Yeah. Think about maybe 10, 15 years down the road, suddenly this band does something amazing, and you've got some images that suddenly are very important.
Yeah.
That's just one aspect of it. I also like the whole idea of going back and looking at old photos because our visions change, our styles change. We may end up going back and finding some gems in there. So sure. I tend to do the same thing.
Yeah, I'll hold on to stuff, and when I have time, I'll go back and look through the archive and just be like, oh, I forgot about these shots. Because a lot of times I'll go to a concert and I'll shoot the opening bands, then the main band, and then I was there on assignment to shoot the main band, and they don't really care about the other bands for whatever reason, so I may not edit those pictures, and then I'll just they'll sit there on a hard drive for months or years, and finally I'll have a free weekend and go back and look and be, oh, I never edited these, and there's a bunch of those I need to do. So anyway,
yeah, Ed says it's memory is such a cheap thing, but yeah, I think a lot of us, they're talking about in the chat that it's hard to hit delete on those, and then somebody said we have to go to a 12-step program.
Yeah, unless it's just completely blown out or completely black or way out of focus or blurry or whatever. I don't know.
Well, but then there's the other side of it. I think this is where we struggle and we're going to talk about do you ever use the HSL to reduce the color?
Yeah, I'll go. That's one of those in case of emergency things, just because, yeah, if it's a 5-star picture or whatever, if it's going to be the picture that I use, if I'm editing it to my portfolio, I'll go in and try everything that I can to see if there's anything I can do to make it better than it is upon the initial edit. But most of the time, if I'm shooting a show and I'm coming back and I'm editing, 10, 20 pictures, I'm not going to do hardcore editing on every single one of them. I'm going to go through and do good enough editing and be done. But then if it's like I said, a 5-star picture, then yeah, I'll go through and do every little thing that I can.
Well, it also depends on the output, where they're going, how much. Sure. If it's just going on a website that's going to be this big, then that's not as huge as if it's going to be printed and stuff like that. Right. But the other side of it that you need to think about is your own angst and your own process. I tend to be a kibitzer and get in there and want to fool with everything. But so what that ends up doing is it slows me down and it gives me angst because it's like, crap, I got to get in there and now edit all these pictures, and they kind of haunt me. Sometimes the most freeing thing you can do is delete some pictures. Yeah. And so there's really a balance to know who you are, know your strengths and weaknesses, and figure out a system that works for you. And usually try to go every year and revisit that system to see if it's still working for you or if you've changed the way you're seeing or doing other things. And always keep trying to improve it so that you get it down and more streamlined, but also it works the way you need it to. Yeah. Speaking of streamlining things, we're going to take a quick break as the thunder and the rain rolls in, and we'll be right back here in just a few minutes. And I'm staring right at the TV.
Get the world's best photography, Photoshop, and Lightroom training at Photoshop World. It's 3 non-stop days of real-world training where you can get personal attention and unlimited access to the world's top instructors in photography, Photoshop, and Lightroom. You'll have chances to experience hands-on live shoots and workshops. This is a must-attend conference for photographers, Photoshop, and Lightroom users. Learn more in 3 days than you have in 3 years. Photoshop World. Sign up today.
Hi, I'm Joel Grimes. I want to invite you to my class on becoming a marketing genius. We're going to talk about things like the truth about marketing, overcoming the fear of rejection, and keeping up with the trends, and a whole lot more. So join me on my class here at kelby1.com.
All right, well, we're back, and I just had to chastise myself because I should be looking there instead of there, so I don't have, like, lazy eye. I just forget, and I like watching myself on the screen.
We have a monitor on set.
The
so
monitor,
we can see
it's shiny, and I look at it.
sees.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm in counseling for it, but that's the problem I have. But you were going to answer another question?
We had one last question. Johan asked if I use Lightroom only or if I start in Lightroom and then go to Photoshop for some pictures. I would say I'm in Lightroom for 90 to 95% of the editing that I do. If there's something just like really tricky that I'm trying to clone out, and for whatever reason the healing brush in Lightroom is not doing the trick, then I'll go into Photoshop and do that. Or on a rare occasion, sometimes I'll have 2 frames that are almost exactly the same, but the lighting is really good in this one, and then it isn't as good in this one, but the gesture is really good in this one and not as good in this one. And I might do a little Photoshop trickery and combine the two so that I have the best of both worlds, lighting and gesture. But again, not a photojournalist. There you go.
All right. Well, hey, let me play with an image, and I'm going to walk you through from the very start. And I either do it in Lightroom or Camera Raw. But a lot of times I'll work in Lightroom if I've got a whole batch of stuff, but a lot of times because I'm doing an image for a specific project or whatever, I just naturally go from Bridge to Camera Raw. The engine's the same, the sliders are just a little bit different as far as where some of these things are located, but the exact same thing. And so the process that I do happens the same way in both of them. And this is an image I took last week and a half ago at the Chattanooga Zoo. Not zoo, aquarium. Same difference.
Different type of animals.
It's hard to get the water to stay in the bars at the zoo. But so the first thing that I do, there are a couple main things that I always do. And the first one, just out of habit, is I just come over and hit auto. And the reason why I do that, whether it's in Lightroom or Camera Raw, is because if nothing else, I tend to think auto makes it a little brighter. Now, it could be calibration. I'm doing some editing here under the lights, so you know, you got to give me a little leeway here because my coloring and lighting might be off a little bit. But the main reason why I hit auto is because it automatically sets the white and black points at their most optimum space, so that I could do the old hold down my Alt or Option button and drag back and forth until I see where I get the right amount of light. And you see right here, what happened here is because I have this big dark swatch back here, it may have thrown it off a little bit, so that would be a good time to check it. But most of the time, auto is going to set your white and black right off the bat, and you don't have to touch them again. Then it's a matter of working from the bottom to the top. I don't like to work from exposure down because exposure is a global change. What I want to do is I want to open up the shadows if I need to and bring down the highlights. And then I can add a little more contrast, and then I decide, how about a little bit more exposure? Then I slide down to clarity, bump up the clarity, depending on what's going on there. If it's more texture, boy, it's extra saturated on that screen over there. It's not nearly as saturated on my computer, so...
it may be either on theirs.
Yeah, who knows? We've got 18 different levels here. But then I'll add a little vibrance. Clarity is that mid-tone contrast that's going to bump up details. Great on things with details. You don't want to use it a lot on women's faces and other things where you want to keep smooth skin. But for something like this, clarity is awesome. Vibrance is going to bump up the coloring, but it's going to do it in such a way that skin tones and things that are already saturated are going to get less saturated, so it helps to keep from blowing out the coloring. It's so hard to discuss this in a calm manner when Brad and Arnaldo are having this weird conversation going back and forth here, but I'm going to press on. Vibrance, it's great for when you've got people in there and you don't want to turn them into alien-looking skin and stuff like that, and then saturation is just going to bump up everything. So I tend to bump those up a little bit. Full disclosure here, I am colorblind, so I tend to sometimes really screw up the color, so I have to get Brad to come in there and tell me that That's crazy. That's also why I like black and white.
Those are supposed to be pink, right?
Yes, they are pink alligators.
Good.
But that would be the first steps that I'd do. Then I'd come over to sharpening, and I'd crank up the sharpening. And this is where I hold down the alter option button on the masking, because it'll show, the white shows where sharpening is applied. And as I drag it over here, it's only going to apply the sharpening in the areas that the white areas are. So I just want to apply the sharpening to the alligator and the textures, not the water and other stuff. So I'm dragging that over there. You can also do the same thing with detail, see where it's being applied. I'm holding down my alter option button and my radius button. I could do that. And so now I can be more aggressive with my sharpening because I've got my masking cranked up and it's only sharpening in the areas that I want. And then finally what I would do for this is, actually I got distracted. One of the very first things I always do is I crop, because the cropping is going to set the tone for your picture.
Right.
And several people have asked about cropping, how it works, and different people have different ideas on cropping. As far as some people want to only crop to certain ratios. People have said, I've written some other stuff before about cropping there. Well, do you make sure to keep it a certain ratio? And my theory is I'm going to crop it to what I think is the most effective crop, regardless of the ratio, because I'd rather crop to avoid something and to make it clear than to keep it at a certain ratio. So that's what I'm going to do. Yes, there are other schools of thought on that, but yes.
Were you using flash on this picture and your shutter speed got above 250th of a second?
No. That's a good question. That does look like that. This is I'm shooting through the plexiglass, and that's the line of the water there. And I was shooting through some crowd of people, and that's as close as I could get.
Gotcha.
So naturally, I'm going to go into my cropping, and I want to come in, and I want to crop into that area there. Now, some of the questions about cropping come down to composition. And if you haven't checked out my class on composition at kelby1.com, you should, because we talk about a lot of where positioning and different things in there that can either attract or detract from your image. And so, first of all, I definitely know I want to get rid of that big black line down there, but every time you're editing a picture, you want to ask yourself the question, what am I saying, and what's the story in here? And the main story here is these two alligators. It's not all this extra stuff, so I want to highlight them, but I want to make sure that I don't add visual tension. And visual tension is when you put something a little too close to the edge of the frame, because the edges of the frame are part of the image and they help give space and breathing room to your elements. So for instance, if I crop this over right here at this tail, like cropped off a little bit of that tail, that's really not cropping, that's clipping. I've clipped off the tail. Or if I came over here and I want to get rid of some of this black stuff and I got a little too close here, notice how it starts to feel a little cramped right in there. So I want to give it enough space so there's breathing room, but I want to eliminate some stuff that doesn't help sell the story. I've got this, if you'll notice right here, there's a dark line from this that's running right over here that can be a distraction, but I do know that I'm going to take care of that in Photoshop, so I'm good with that. So there's the difference. Notice it got more intimate. It got more, it's just a better story there than, oh, of course, I had to go all the way back. Yeah, than in the beginning. And so here we can actually, let's do it this way so you can see. Nope, that's just going to be the,
yeah, it's just showing the edit.
I'm a very good user of these programs. I know them really well. Okay, so this is where I'd pretty much get to in my quick editing in Lightroom or Camera Raw, but I do a lot more in Photoshop. So I know that I'm going to jump over there. Oh, one last thing. I'm going to use the post-crop vignette to darken the edges. Your eye is drawn to the lighter areas of the frame, and so when adding a little vignette helps bring the eye more towards the center of the frame. And so I'd like to do that just to help keep the eye from going off into the corners. So now I'm going to do just a little bit of that, and then I'm going to open the image in Photoshop. Now here's the deal. If I was just doing this to capture the moment, this is about where I'd stay. But because I'm not doing this for photojournalism or anything like that, I want to get in here and play. And one of the first things I know I'm going to do on this is, because it's about detail, I'm going to want to change this to black and white. A lot of people ask, when do you go black and white? When do you stay color? Well, I tend to fall towards black and white simply because sometimes color trips me up, but also black and white helps reveal the detail better than color. Color can oftentimes be a distraction. It's an element unto itself. Sometimes the story is all about color, and sometimes color can overwhelm what else is going on in there. And for this one, I wanted those alligators and their skin and their texture and stuff like that. And the coloring really wasn't helping tell the rest of the story. So I'm going to come in.
They kind of blend in with the background.
Yep. So I'm going to come in, and for this one, I'm just going to hit the black and white adjustment layer here. I could have done this. I meant to do it in Camera Raw, but the nice thing about doing it here is I can show you the great thing about the adjustment layer is that I can go back and tweak this anytime I want. But so now I can dial up and down the reds, the yellows, the greens, and pretty much dial up the contrast I want for all these. All right, so that would be where I'd bring this over into Photoshop. And I already have like a good cooking show. Don't look for a second. Don't look. Don't look. There we go. All right. So actually, I did this the other way. I'm sorry. I lied. What do you notice besides the alligators when you're looking at this picture? What else is grabbing your eye? Brad? Quit typing on it. What grabs your eye besides the alligators?
The stuff in the background coming down the wall there?
Right.
Yeah.
Our eyes are drawn to lines and brightness and detail.
Yep.
And so as much as we want this story to be about the alligators, what happens? Our eyes can't help but keep jumping over to those diagonal bright vines that are in the background. They are a distraction. They keep... Try not to look at them. You can't. Your eye keeps getting pulled over there. There's whole science about where our eyes want to go and track, and me and my friend have come up with about 8 different factors that your eye is always going to, but we can know right off the bat that these vines, and even this little duty up here, I think that's electrified something or other, I'm not sure, they're just grabbing your eye. Your eye's going towards detail and lightness and lines. So I spend a good amount of time in Photoshop. This is before, and that's after. Notice the difference, how it's already settled down. Look at that before. And that's after. The story is about the alligators. It's not about all those vines and stuff. Now, one of my favorite tools in Photoshop is a spot healing brush. And I can pretty much do a lot of this with nothing but the spot healing brush. Here, I'm just going to grab it right here, and I'm going to trace down this vine. And let it think, and boom, it's gone. Come down here, spot healing brush. Boop. Boop, gone. This little thing right here. Every now and again, because of certain things, I'll have to switch over to a healing brush or the clone stamp tool. But especially for lines, spot healing brush loves to get rid of lines. So I will come through and work all this. Here's another little tip for you, though. Things that hit the edge of the frame sometimes can get a little clunky and junky when you're using the spot healing brush. If I came in here and tried to get rid of that dark spot up there, I guarantee you it's going to get a little funky. Except for when I'm demonstrating it, which it always works great when you're demonstrating it. If it doesn't work well, the workaround that I find around the edges, the best thing is use your lasso tool, lasso around it. Oh, yes. Don't even ask. I don't know what's going on. Okay, make this selection around it. Then use Shift-Delete to bring up your fill dialog and use content aware. For some reason, it handles the corners much better than the spot healing brush. So that would be my one little thing. And so I just go through and try to eliminate, even down here, you've got this bright reflection of that vine we took care of here. Don't forget to take care of it down here as well. So I spend the whole time looking at that. And I had a choice of, do I leave these things in here or not? But I kind of like having a little bit of texture in there. So there's before and there's after. Notice we're a craftsman and an artist. We're trying to make this as simplified and as harmonious a picture as we can. That was a noisy picture. This is a nice quiet picture. And then finally, I convert it to black and white because now the details, the skin and stuff, it pops and it's got a little extra grunge to it.
Now, what if I just wanted to focus on the alligator in the back? Could you get rid of the one in the front too?
I could. It'd take some time. The thing with Photoshop is, yes, you can. How much time and money do you have to do it? But that's kind of how I'm thinking about when I'm looking at an image. I'm taking it to the level of I want to bring this picture out as a finished image, and so I'm going to try to eliminate as many distractions as possible.
Yep.
As long as it's not for photojournalism, I'm gonna do a lot to it. So that was a lot. Why don't we take a quick break and
we'll come back and we'll talk about how to best prepare for certain types of shoots.
Yep.
All right. Be back in a little bit.
Hey guys, Christina from Shark Pixel here. Check out my brand new class on kelby1.com. This class is designed to help take your retouching to the next level. From beginner skin techniques all the way to the end where you will achieve your master's in skin retouching. So I hope you'll come check out my brand new class only on kelby1.com.
Create your own space at squarespace.com.
Hi, this is Joe McNally for Kelby One, and check out my class, Photographing Your Sense of Humor, shot underwater at the Weeki Wachee Mermaid Springs, the famous home of the mermaids here in Florida. And it's a fun class. Lots of things going on. Stop by, check it out.
we're back, and Brad just said to me, I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to set Brad on fire.
Well, he was asking me, he's like, do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? Well, yeah, do whatever you want.
Well, how about this, Brad? What's going on with our Peach Pit e-deals? Go.
We have a Peach Pit e-deal for you. Our viewers get 40% off of How to Get People to Do Stuff by Susan Weinshank, PhD. If you go to peachpit.com/Kelby1 and enter the code Kelby1, you will get 40% off of that e-book.
Well done. Nice radio voice.
I try.
And great pronunciation of her last name. I was impressed.
Confidence.
Yes.
Confidence is key.
Bam.
Even if you're saying it wrong, just, I got this.
All right. So now I just want to show you a couple of other, I'm just going to use Bridge to show you a couple other before and afters so that to get you thinking about cleaning up images. Somebody asked, how long does it take to do these things? Well,
depends on how much time you've got.
It depends on how much time you've got, what it's for, where it's going to be shown, and your level of OCD. You know, if you just can't stop until you take care of everything, which sometimes I get into, it takes a long time. But you've also got to realize, is that part of the joy in the art and the craft that you're doing? For some people, that's almost like therapy, getting there and cleaning it up. It's sort of like Forrest Gump cutting the grass. You know, for me, a lot of times it's getting rid of those distractions. And it makes such a difference when you start focusing on that, or it can become a curse. For instance, if we look over here, that's the original picture right there that I did at a balloon race. And
did you win?
I win no matter what I do. But when you start looking at this, right off the bat, you start noticing these little elements and stuff that are distracting in here. And this is what happened after I got through. Just coming in and taking care of some little things, getting rid of those little distractions, even the ropes and stuff that are going around their head. Notice before it's busy and the story is kind of what, where, whereas this one, the story is about these two guys in the balloon and it settles down. Same thing here. We have, this was during Memorial Weekend, And so a couple things that happen is you've got all these light spots up here. Your eye keeps going up to these light areas up here, and then this color and little element there. So that's after. Clean it up, even cleaned up the grass. There are little spots in the grass. Look right up here, these little areas here. They're just little visual speed bumps that add noise to the image. So just cleaning those up really helps settle the thing down. So there's before, there's after. Here's Old Car City, and a great image of this truck, but there's just a lot going on there. So in cleaning it up, getting rid of some of the distractions, now it really becomes about the car and less about the junk around it. Same thing here. Well, that was before, but notice your eye is always getting drawn to the back corner with these other cars and stuff over here. Well, cleaning those up, now it becomes just about that car. Same thing here. This truck is neat, but automatically you're seeing this stuff back here. So I want to tell the story about the truck, so I clean all that up, so it's now about the truck. I was going to use that as an example, and this one is an example. Here's the thing. Sometimes you can't, boy, that's extra dark there. You can't determine what's going on in the scene. You can't control all the situation. And this guy wanted me to take a picture of him.
And he's obviously in control. He has a gun.
He has a gun and a bear. And the problem is there was no clean background to take a picture of him. It's so busy. Look, even he's got his mug and stuff in there. So real quickly, one of the first things I would do is try to crop out as much as I can. And this is where you have to make a lot of decisions about, you know, what are you going to keep or not? Do you keep the keyboard and go all the way to here, but then you start getting some of that book over here, or do you come back over here? What about that red light? There's all of these questions you get to ask yourself. Cropping can be a wonderful tool, but it can be maddening once you start going down that road of really trying to find the best crop. But once you start playing with it, you want to limit it and narrow it down, because the story is about him and the bear. And so I had that as I was going to walk through that, but for time and y'all's sanity, I'm not going to go through that. But it's something to think about. Here's another one real quick, for instance. That was a shot. We were at this overlook, and there really wasn't much there. I'm like, it needs something in the foreground. So I just grabbed my knife, stuck it in the ground. It's not the most fabulous picture, but it's starting to grab a little more attention than if I didn't have the knife there. But the problem is your eye gets drawn to these bright areas all over the place. So just with a little cleanup, look at the difference in how the picture feels from that to that.
Yeah, for sure.
That one's got a lot of activity, and you don't know where to look, and you don't know what's going on, where that's a lot more peaceful.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what trying to help you see is that you've got the tools to get in there and really sell the story and edit it to tell the story the way you want. Clean up those distractions and make it about what you want it to be about. And so that's kind of my quick run through. And then this was the final image that I was going to edit for y'all. And I have no clue how to edit this. That's just I just wanted to leave that with you because it's creepy.
For our viewers who are in other parts of the world and are about to go to bed, I apologize.
Yes. How about that right there? Larry Becker called this Youth Springs Eternal.
Oh
so anyway.
Of course he did. So Pete, we had a question from Lyle asking if it's better to make extensive edits in Lightroom or Photoshop. I was in Lightroom, you're in Photoshop. What are the advantages, disadvantages?
Okay, it's just, here's the deal. With each program, they usually have some native things they do best. But the way Photoshop and all these work, Illustrator, they can do more stuff. Illustrator can do imagery, can do pictures. Photoshop can do vector images, but one's better for doing one than the other. Lightroom and Camera Raw are the best for editing your photos, changing the clarity, the contrast, the white balance. Mm-hmm. If you've got to adjust your global picture, and actually now with all the tools now allow you to have the adjustment brush to erase areas. So I could come in with a gradient and darken the sky and erase out some areas. Lightroom, you can do more and more big editing there. But as soon as you're getting into the heavy-duty editing of cloning and healing and removing things, Lightroom starts to be a little tricky. So you really want to, when you're going to get nitpicky and get down in there, Photoshop is going to be faster. that being said, I did a post on Lightroom Killer Tips last week about how good Lightroom is getting at making some of these edits. So if you go to lightroomkillertips.com, you can see that there. But my go-to program for most everything, since I am a Photoshop guy, is to go back to Photoshop to make those big edits.
One other question, I saw somebody ask about it. Just for people who are watching and don't know what this is, can you just 15 seconds on what this is?
This is the love of my life. This is called the...
Can you turn it around at all or no? Sorry.
Mom, I'm taking care of it. This is called the Wacom Cintiq. And you may have seen a lot of digital pads that people use, but this is the version that actually... I'm going to take it off the stand. It is another screen. It's a secondary screen. I've got my computer hooked up over here, but everything I'm doing directly on the screen with a pen. So instead of having, and it's pressure sensitive, which is awesome, so I can do light lines or dark lines. But so instead of having just the tablet right there, that's still a disconnect between my hand working on the tablet and the screen up here.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I'm a traditional artist. I like working directly on it. This speeds things up. I'm working right here on the screen, and the input's going through my pen, and I'm taking care of all that right there.
Working directly on the canvas.
Yep, I'm working directly on the canvas. I love these. It took me 4 years to convince my old boss to get me one of these, and then I loved it so much I would carry it from work to home and back every day, so much that I destroyed 2 of those cords back there and had to get them fixed. If I had nothing else, the Cintiq would be one of the things I would rescue and take on a desert island with me.
Very nice. All right.
Johan Stoop, Pete, how much of your photos do you convert to black and white, and do you use plugins like Silver FX Pro? Yes, I do. Silver FX Pro is one of the most creamiest, awesome black and white conversions there is. However, that being said, I tend to be working in different platforms, jumping back and forth, and I'm forgetful. If I was smart, I would be going to Silver FX Pro more than I do, because I just simply get kind of tunnel vision. Some of y'all might be like me, and I forget, and then I get done and go, man, I should have taken that over to Silver FX Pro because it's so nice.
Yeah, and for me, like, the plugins are the things that, like I said before, I'll go through and do a general edit on all the selects, but if there's that one that I know I'm going to be adding to the portfolio, that's when I break out the plugins and go into all the different stuff just to see if anything can make it better than it already is.
Well, and a lot of what I'm doing is for teaching and for examples, and so I'm thinking how to keep them and do them in Lightroom or Photoshop, so I forget the plugins sometimes until I remember. But yeah, love Silver FX Pro.
All right, so we got about 10, 12 minutes left here.
Oh yeah,
Do you want to go through some tips for being prepared for shoots?
Yeah. So what we were talking about is I brought up the whole idea of what if we talked about some times when we messed up or didn't learn through hard knocks or messing up, and then that kind of
led shoots that could have gone better,
and that led us into thinking about giving y'all some tips about things that you could be prepared for.
Yep.
I will share the quick story of last week. 2 weeks ago, I was up in Tennessee, and I had planned out a day to go shoot the Ocoee River with the whitewater rafters and the kayakers. I had done my research on where to go, what time the water flowed, and all that stuff. So I get in my car and I go bebopping up there. And the one thing I didn't take into account is when I got there was a guy fishing near the area I was going to shoot. I'm like, hey, when did the kayakers come down? And he says, probably about 2.5 hours from now. In my mind, I didn't think how long it would take for, once they open up the river, the dam, to let the water through, how long it'd take for the water to actually get to the part that I was at. I was at the end of the run, so I was there 2 hours early to begin with. Okay, so no problem. That gives me a chance to scout things out. As I'm scouting things out, I slip and fall, nearly break my buttocks, still sore to this point. Nearly broke my camera, nearly dropped it in the water. I fell in the water 3 times. The umbrella, it was raining at the time. As I got down and set up, there were 2 guys in this place that I wanted to shoot that were just carving it up. As soon as I got set up with my camera, they were done. And they got out and left. I'm like, I sat there for an hour, nothing happened. I finally said, I'm going to go get something from the car. As soon as I went up to the car, 8 rafts went by. Missed them all. Go back down the hill. I nearly fall in again. I'm getting drenched. My camera's getting wet. It's just horrible. I sit there for another 45 minutes. Nothing. All right, I need to switch something out. As soon as I get to the car, 5 or 6 more rafts come by. It did that 4 times. It was almost.
You had a great day.
It was almost one of those. I was looking for the cameras. That God was having fun with me. Well, here's the thing. I ended up spending 5 hours there, and I got 5 pictures.
Are any of them usable?
None of them are worth showing because they're just like, because by the time I got set up, they were gone. It was more like I'm racing down there to get the picture, and there's nothing to it.
So I guess the question is, you had this experience. If you go back, what did you learn from this experience that you would apply to your next time, if you even think it's worth going back?
Well, here's the thing that I now know so much more than I did before. And that's the thing you got to have in mind. Oftentimes we will go out and we will shoot crap or it'll be horrible. You've got to put that into your head that I have just gained experience and this is going to pay off in the future. Because now I know a whole lot more about what I need to do to be prepared for the next time, and I'm more prepared. And that's the difference between an amateur and a pro a lot of times, because they've experienced enough and usually screwed up like we have enough that they kind of know what to expect. And so that's kind of led us to the whole idea of there's some different things that you might not be aware that could help you, that we could save you if we give you a couple little tips.
Sure.
For instance, concert photography.
Yes.
What kind of things do you bring now that you know to bring or know to do that you didn't know when you started out?
So here's kind of my strategy for concerts. Every venue is different. The smaller ones, my experience, this may not be everybody's experience, but for me, what tends to happen is the smaller venues don't have photo pits, and you can stay the whole time and shoot the whole time because they don't really enforce the three song limit, in my experience. So for that, because there's no photo pit, you don't have a reserved spot, so you've got to be there and get in as soon as the doors open so you can get up front, and you're not like battling people to try to, fight through the crowd to get to where you want to be to get shots. And you have to plant yourself there. So not only do you have to get in first, you either have to be dehydrated so you're not going to the bathroom, or you go to the bathroom as soon as you get in and then go plant yourself in front of the stage. And I always have a bottle of water with me. Usually if you have a photo pass, like they might kind of peek in your bag, but I'll have a bottle of water kind of under the lenses so they don't see it in my bag. Because a lot of times venues are charging $5 for a bottle of water or something. I'm just like, no, I can bring my own water. And then, so then when you get to medium-sized venue, like the place I shot last night, sometimes they have a photo pit, sometimes they don't. They didn't last night. Thankfully, I was shooting for the band and could go on stage and shoot from the side. But had I not been able to do that, and I showed up an hour after doors open, about the time the first band was going on, I would have been shooting from the back the entire time. And like you can get some good shots from there, but you're kind of limited on what you can do. So finding out, does the venue have a photo pit? If it doesn't, what time did doors open? Because sometimes they'll open an hour before the first act, sometimes they'll open 30 minutes, sometimes it'll be 2 hours. It all depends.
Well, can even what kind of gear you bring in, what kind of bag you bring in. I know Alan Hess has a certain type of bag for a certain venue because of how it keeps close to his body.
Yeah, so even knowing if the photo pit's really tight or if it's spacious or whatever, like there's all these things that you're not going to know until you go shoot a show somewhere. Maybe not even just for one time, but 2 times or 5 times, because 4 out of the 5 shows there might be a photo pit, and then you show up that 5th time and you're like, there's always been a photo pit here. Why is there not one? Well, because the band didn't want to pay the $40 for it or whatever it is, Well, and then relationships with the different venues. Right.
How many times have you been back to a place and you've had a good relationship with them and it saved your butt?
Yeah, no, there's one of the smaller venues here. Every single time I've been, it's the same guy at the door checking people's tickets and stuff. And after you show up a few times, he's like, "Oh, my man, what's up?" And half the time, like, you've been on the list every single time, he'll kind of glance at it and he's like, "Yeah, you're good, whatever, go on in." And like, I'm legitimately allowed to be there and shoot, but like, he knows me and he knows that I'm not going to be trying to pull anything over on him. And so he's just like, "Yeah, go on in, you need to use the bathroom, go for it, whatever."
Right.
You know, so yeah, building relationships with people is very helpful. Don't be a jerk.
Don't forget earplugs.
Don't forget earplugs. I've done that before. I've even gone to a show not even shooting, and because I wasn't shooting, I forgot my earplugs, and I got in and I was like, oh crap, I forgot my earplugs. But I was thinking, oh well, this is like my chill music, it'll be fine. But it was still really, really loud, and so I regretted not having the earplugs. So yeah, just having a checklist of stuff that you know you're always going to need. And even the bigger venues, sometimes you're going to have a soundboard shoot. So finding out, do you need a step ladder? Are you going to be able to, wherever you're going to be, are you going to be standing at the same level as the crowd as they stand up? Are they going to be standing the whole time? It depends on the show. Are you going to need a big lens, a 200 to 400, a 400 to 2.8 with an extender or whatever? Like all those little things. You show up with the wrong lens. There's even kind of a, I would say it's not the biggest venue, but it's not a medium-sized venue. It's kind of in between. And there's no photo pit at all. You have to shoot from the side of the venue, of the auditorium. So even though it's not a soundboard shoot, I'm still bringing a 200 to 400 because I'm not right down front.
Got a couple great questions.
Yeah.
Brad, before a concert, how much time do you spend on camera settings until you think, okay, I can shoot now? That's from Johan.
I have my basic settings that I use every time. So I basically, I shoot with the 1DX, so you can save settings to a card and then load them. So that's what I do. So I have my concert settings. Again, people are going to shoot differently, but I go in on aperture priority, auto ISO, with a minimum shutter speed of 200, 250 a second, somewhere around there. Shoot wide open with whatever lens I'm using.
That minimum shutter speed is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because that's bit me in the butt.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you learn when you go in there and you're like, I'm ripping and roaring, and all of a sudden you realize you're shooting some shots at a 15th of a second.
Yeah.
And that little thing on the back says it looks sharp, but it's not.
Right. So, yeah.
Also, somebody asked if you get the permit,
thing.
if you get the shooting permit, wouldn't they tell you about the photo pit?
Not necessarily, because you're not always going through the venue, and so you're going through the band's management. The management's not out on the road. Their publicist isn't out on the road. They have a tour manager that handles the photo passes once they get the list from management or whatever. So, like, just because you have approval to shoot doesn't mean that they're going to tell you if there's a photo pit or not. So
Somebody said, what do you do for white balance?
Auto white balance, and then you saw all the editing that I did at the beginning of the show. If you didn't, you can go back and watch it tomorrow once it shows up.
Johan obviously has stronger ears than we do, because they said you only need earplugs if you're listening to Metallica or Motorhead. No, I've been to shoot a concert you wouldn't think it, and literally your heart's getting beat up by the bass.
No, that was what I was saying. Like, I showed up to a show that I wasn't even shooting, and since I wasn't shooting, I forgot my earplugs. And thought, oh, I'll be okay because this is what I listen to when I'm like wanting to relax, and it's a lot of kind of ambient music, but it was really, really loud. So yeah, unless you want to sacrifice your hearing and go around yelling at everybody because you can't even hear yourself, then yeah, don't wear earplugs. It's fine.
Okay, here are a couple other things that we've gleaned along the way, and you can jump in. I wrote down some different events shooting that you might not think about certain things. For a wedding, if you're a wedding shooter, you probably always want to carry around some white and dark thread and a needle, safety pins, gaffer's tape, and some bungee cords because outfit mess-ups, something doesn't look quite right, and you can save yourself a lot of time if you just safety pin some stuff instead of having to do it in post. Also think about bringing tape, but extra batteries. No matter how many batteries you think, you need double that. Because it's always the batteries that get you in there. But also, don't forget during a wedding, I always bring, and pretty much any shoot I go to, I think to bring water and snacks, like protein bars or something, because you may not get a chance to take a break. Or let's say when I shot indie races way back in the day when I met Scott, the thing is you had to walk almost 1.5 miles to get to a certain spot. Well, about the time you get there, you're like, man, I'm thirsty and hungry. You don't have time to go back and do that. You need to bring that stuff with you. So you're always wanting to think about those. Another thing to think about if you're going to be shooting weddings is make sure you talk to the event coordinator and the minister of that facility, because they can give you a lot of great advice, but also tell you what's off limits. Nothing worse than finding out at that moment that you can't shoot flash, you can't do this or whatever, or you tick off that minister and they don't want you back in there. Studio. if you're shooting in a studio, some of the things that people might not think about is maybe
Music.
having a good music selection. That can really make the difference in what kind of mood's going on during a studio shoot.
Find out what kind of music your subject likes, not necessarily what you like.
Right.
Because you want to put them at ease, not you.
The other thing is make sure you can locate and maybe have a backup set of triggers for your lights. I ran into that just the other day. Came in here. We've got all kinds of lights and all that, but you know how effective they are if you can't find the triggers? Zero. Brad was hoarding them all. I'm just saying. And then also, one of the things a lot of people don't think about when they're setting up a home studio or whatever is Apple boxes.
Yes.
How much do we love Apple boxes?
Love them to death. Love them so much our video department keeps stealing them.
They keep
from
stealing
me.
them.
So I lock them in my office.
But if you don't know what they are, you can look them up Google. They're just little boxes to stand, people to stand on. Wooden boxes, wooden crates.
And what they help with a lot of times is especially if you're doing a shoot with multiple people and you've got a height differential that you're trying to even out, you put a half box. They come in like quarter, half,
so that,
full,
that,
three,
that.
You know, like all different sizes, and they help kind of even out heights. And
now,
plenty of uses for them.
I'm almost 6'4", and I won't say specifically who, but certain people on the team with me will sometimes have to stand on an Apple box when we film together. Maybe.
Anyway.
Then landscapes. If you're going out to shoot landscapes, one of the things that just like I didn't do is, well, no, I did have rain gear, but have backups. Because here's the thing. If you go out, even if you have your rain gear, and you're going to be out there for a duration, you need to have a change of clothes and maybe a second set of gear. Because what happens is you come back and all your stuff is wet, and you're either going to get sick or you're gonna close it up, you're going to pack it up and leave, you're going to be in a bad mood like I was and threw stuff in the van, and it's not pretty. Think about not only getting there and getting the shot, but also what's going to keep you there so that you can get more shots and then get back in a good frame of mind. And I usually say, take a partner with you, or at least somebody who knows where you're going. Because when I nearly fell, well, when I fell in the river and I thought, boy, it was slick rocks, it was not pretty, and that's when I decided to pack it up. I was about to kill my camera gear, but I was also about to break my neck. I'm like, nobody really knows where I am. And that can be a real dangerous situation. Fortunately, I was right there. People would have seen my dead body floating along with them, so they could have sent my body home. But when you're going to do landscape photography, a lot of times it's getting out into some certain remote areas. At least have somebody know what's going on. Preferably take a partner with you. Also think about ladders and other things that can give you a different perspective. Bungee cords, ropes, clamps, other things like that that you can take with you, because so many times you'll get to a place and it's like, boy, if I could just get over this branch or just do this or whatever. So
bring a hacksaw?
Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. Yeah, anything else? Why are you looking at these? Are my notes?
Well, because you make good notes. Did we talk about sports yet? We didn't talk about sports, did we?
Well, okay, yeah, events, especially sporting events. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not really a sports shooter, but like I pack Scott's gear whenever he goes and shoots games, so I know a little bit. Look at the weather before you go if you're shooting an outdoor event, because if it's going to rain, you want to make sure you have some sort of protection for your gear, because you don't want to get out there and get caught in the rain and have to not shoot. Knowing what kind of access you're going to have depending on what level of event you're shooting, whether it's a high school sporting event, college, a pee-wee, whatever. A lot of times it helps to know the people that are involved with running the things, especially at smaller levels, because then they're going to work with you on letting you shoot from different spots versus shooting in an NFL game. Like, you are going to be more limited. You're not going to be able to necessarily go out on the field and shoot unless you're shooting for the team, during warm-ups or whatever.
Knowing, it's sort of just like the wedding thing. Know who has the power and the right to say no to you and limit your access, and then become friends with them and make sure they know that you're trying to serve them, because that will go a long way. For instance, at that same Indy races that I met Scott in, I got a hot pass to be able to go over the wall and shoot the cars. But I didn't hear them say that you cannot kneel down. No, at no time can a knee touch the pit row. And so I'm kneeling down, getting this great fisheye shot of this car or whatever, and the guy in charge of the track just about grabbed me by the neck and yanked me over the wall and was that close to pulling my pass because I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. And that's the worst thing you want to do is not be aware of something, mess up, and lose access for the rest of the time, because it's harder to build back that trust on the back end than the fore end.
Yeah. And no matter what kind of shoot you're doing, you want to make sure you always have extra memory cards. And you already mentioned batteries, but like those are the two things that I pretty much always have on my person no matter what I'm shooting, because that's the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't even matter how big the card is you're shooting with, because a card can go bad.
Right.
In the middle of a shoot. It's happened. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. So
you have to plan for redundancy, and that goes into the next thing that I would say for any event, sporting, whatever. Have a plan for a secondary staging of stuff, because a lot of times you can't carry everything with you, but you may be able to put it somewhere. But if you're going to do that, have a good locking mechanism, and have some good stuff, or that stuff may walk away.
Yeah. A lot of bags have built-in cables and locks. But if yours doesn't, then that's a good thing to invest in.
For instance, going to a wedding, I know that I'm going to be running and gunning, shooting the bride and the groom, but then we got to set up the lights and do all this, and I might want to change lenses, reception. So I immediately bring in my rolling case full of stuff and find a place where it can be safe out of the way, but then I can access it on the run to switch things out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg asked, hey, I've got an awesome thought. Brad or Pete, can you do a guest blog on Scott's with a list of helpful things to bring? Well, we'll talk about it. Maybe, possibly in the future.
Could be something for the Kelby One blog.
Maybe something for the Kelby One blog.
We'll
try to figure something out. But speaking of new great stuff.
Yes, we got some new classes on Kelby One. Do you want to tell them about Joel Grimes' new class?
No, you do it so much better than I do.
All right, I'll do it. So, on KelbyOne.com, we have a brand new class from Joel Grimes called Becoming a Marketing Genius. In this class, you can learn how to thrive as a professional. There's no talk of f-stops or lighting in this class. It's possible for you to make a living in photography, but it takes more than just being a good photographer. You need also... Wait, now the teleprompter messing up. You also need to be good at marketing yourself, your work, and what you can do that sets you apart from the competition. Joel shares wisdom he's learned and earned from years of knocking on doors, making cold calls, and getting the client he was after. If he can do it, so can you.
Wow. Well done. That was a lot. Well done. Well done. Speaking of a lot, how about another class by Joe McNally?
Oh my goodness.
An analysis of light shaping tools with Joe McNally. The job of a light modifier is to take a raw blast of light and shape it, contain it, and make it work for the kind of shot you are trying to create. Joe McNally takes a clinical look at the range of light shaping tools in a sterile studio environment to help inform your ability to extrapolate, nice word, out their performance into the real world. Starting with a series of light modifiers for small flash, Joe demonstrates how each one works while using the same subject and catalogs the effect each light shaping tool has on the light source and the subject. So there you go. Extrapolate.
Lovely stuff. So, what are we going to give away here today on the show?
You know, we kind of tease around, but those are some great classes.
Yeah, they really
you definitely need to check out. And don't forget to check out my class on composition.
Guess what else?
What?
If you go to PhotoshopWorld.com and use the code PSWDAD, because Father's Day is coming up, you can get $50 off of a Photoshop World full conference registration. So, what better way to say I love you to your dad than with a Photoshop World ticket? Come on, man. You know he wants to go to Vegas. You know he wants to rub elbows with the likes of Joe McNally, Dave Black, RC, and myself. Who's myself? I don't know who wrote this. And you know he'll love the shooting opportunities, the networking, the models, the new gear, the education, and it'll all put a smile on his face that will last and last. So go to PhotoshopWorld.com and use the code PSWDAD to get your $50 discount.
You know, and I have a feeling that even if you're not a dad, you could probably still use it.
Probably.
And also, don't forget, Mandalay Bay is having a great deal.
Yes.
If you want to get a hotel room where we stay,
yes.
It's the closest, it's the best. You just need to check it out. Go over to
Mandalay
Bay at Photoshop World and reserve your ticket now because it's coming up. It's not too far away. Now's the time to make the plans.
Come stay with me.
All right, so now we've got that out of the way. Let's talk about giveaways. Brad, we're going to give away 2 books today.
Oh, my goodness.
And one is Visual Stories. I am so good.
You're not a visual person, are you?
Vincent LaFerre.
We love Vincent LaFerre.
And we do love Vincent LaFerre. I mean,
he's
just a cool dude. We'll give him kudos all day long. And then Exposure, from great snapshots to great shots, by our buddy Jeff Revell. He does some amazing books with this whole series. We love both of these guys. I was going to say, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd probably go with Jeff because he covers my back better in Call of Duty. So that's all I got to say about that. But how do we win these prizes, Brad?
If you go to kelby1.com/contest, choose the show you're watching, which is The Grid. Put your info in there. Leave a comment telling us which book you want to win. If you want to give us some feedback on the show, whatever you want to put there, you know, ways that you can send us money.
Your ATM
whatever.
PIN number,
yeah,
we'll take it.
Stuff like that.
Well, hey, Brad, speaking of reaching out and touching you, how can people find out more about you?
So my website is actually bemorevisuals.com, but if you don't know that my name is Brad Moore and you don't get that Be More Visuals is kind of a play on words, it can be a little tricky. So what I've done is I have registered.
This is taking way too long.
bradsbeard.com.
bradsbeard.com.
Which will redirect you to Be More Visuals, or bradtakespictures.com. Either one of those will get you to the right place.
Awesome. And you can find me over at petecollins.com or at the Kelby One website or any of the stuff that we're doing. Just track us down, say hey, send us a joke, send us money. We thank you so much for joining us here this week, and we will see you back here next week. Probably won't be us. It'll probably be Scott and RC. But hey, thank you so much for staying with us, and we will see you next time right here on The Grid. Take care, guys.
Bye.